Hello everyone, I'm Rafael Alvarez and this is Alvarez Metalworks. So this is part 2 of the, I don't really know what I'm going to title this thing. Basically I'm removing rust and repainting the sides of this 2005 Jetta TDI. Let me come to the passenger side because I've already started working on the driver's side and show you what I'm dealing with. Another light's pretty bad here. Give me a second. Okay, so essentially we got this situation. It's rust, but it's not rust to the degree that we have holes in the body. So it's addressable. If you look right in here, I don't know how well this is showing up. There's some spots where it's starting to come apart, but I'm going to catch this in time to be able to address this without having any metal repair. Okay? Over here in the front fender where the bumper is, we've got an issue. The big issue on the passenger side is right here on the door. I've got to remove the door trim, and I started pulling it off yesterday to get an idea of how it needs to come off. And apparently these are attached via like a double stick adhesive. So I'm going to have to use a heat gun to try not to damage that trim. Get it nice and warm, and hopefully the adhesive will release and I can pull that trim off of there and sand that whole area down and address the repair, and then we'll figure out how to get the trim back on later. The goal is to not damage the trim though. Back here on the rear quarter we have an issue there, as well as right here where the bumper is. I'm noticing right here as well. There's only so much I'm going to be able to do. Stuff like this, I'm only going to be able to repair to the molding. I'm not pulling windows out and stuff like that. The goal is to try to preserve the body work on this car as long as possible. Okay? For at least, hopefully give the owner another few years of use out of this before it has gaping holes in the body. So here's an example of what I'm doing to repair the area. This side had a lot more issues. Right here above the fender, we had a big issue. We still have this issue here, smaller, but it's still an issue. And the issue there on the bottom of the door rocker area. The rear's got a couple spots as well. So I guess it's real similar. The big difference is this had a big issue above the fender. So I'm using, sorry about pacing back and forth. I'm using a Harbor Freight angle grinder, pneumatic angle grinder, which works fine. These things are like 10 bucks or something like that, somewhere in that ballpark range. And I'm using a roll-lock attachment that I also picked up from Harbor Freight. You can get these from Rourke Supply. I had purchased this before my deal with them. However, the strip disc that's on here, okay, that is from Rourke Supply. Now, you see here that I'm running real close to the rubber. So I'm going to swap the roll-lock disc out, or backer, I don't know what you want to call that. I'm going to swap that out for a smaller one so that I can get more life out of these strip discs, and it'll allow me to edge into areas. Okay, this works really good for removing the rust and the paint. It makes real quick work of it, and essentially what I'm doing is I'm removing it down to clean metal. This doesn't remove metal, hardly any, if any at all. So I'm removing it down to the clean metal. Then I'm going to use a product called Dolphin Glaze. It's made by a company called U-Pol. I'll show you the package of that a little bit later once I get ready to do that. I'm going to show you how to mix that up and everything. It's a body filler of sorts. It's not like Bondo. It's not something that you'll be able to use on big dents or anything. Ultimately, what it is you typically lay down your regular body filler, then you would put this Dolphin Glaze over the top of it, and it'll get rid of any deep scratches and stuff like that and allow you to finish sand and deal with any kind of slight imperfections and be able to finish it off and prep it for paint, for primer and paint. Because I don't have any dents, I'm not dealing with dents here. I'm dealing with the unevenness from going from paint into the steel, into the metal. So that's why I'm using Dolphin Glaze, because it's a very thin body filler, I guess you can say, and it'll help with that transition. What I am noticing here is that there is some body filler on this fender. Now, just from looking at the car, I wouldn't doubt that if this car had been hit here in the corner at one point in time, and as well as in the rear quarter, I'm noticing a difference in the paint. And I know for sure the owner said the passenger side quarter had some damage on it that was repaired. So I'm noticing the body filler, so I'm going to be real careful not to dig too deep into that, because I don't want to have to go buy some body filler and fill that up. So right now my next step is I'm going to pull the bumper, not all the way off, but get the inner fender well unscrewed from there, the plastic inner fender well right in there, get it unscrewed from there as well, and pull the bumper away from the fender enough for me to get back in between here and clean it up. Okay, the reality is that this rust is caused from the screw or where the bumper attaches to the fender. Okay, some sort of chip or whatever happened, installing this or whatever over time, just the vibrations, a scratch, and eventually the salt gets in there and starts to rust it. So I'm going to pull this apart and get to the source, clean it up, and make sure that source area is painted and primed and dealt with. On this side, you can see some of the metal is gone. Okay. Once I get the fender well removed from there, I'm going to be able to see how bad that damage is. I do have some thin sheet metal if I do need to try to patch that. I'm going to absolutely try to avoid it. This job was not... The cost of this job didn't involve metal repair. So I'm going to try to avoid it. I'm just going to try to clean it up and prevent it from getting any worse. Okay, everyone. You saw that I was doing some sandblasting here. I'll put a link down in the description on where you can get the gun and this desiccant filter. There's actually a whole video about this. If you just type in sandblasting into the video search, you guys should be able to find that in my video search, not the entire YouTube's library. Go to my channel and search my videos. You should be able to find this. Basically, there's no way for me to get into this seam with anything other than a blaster, and I'm not liking what I'm seeing, to be perfectly honest. You see this big gaping hole here? Okay, it blew out all the loose rust, and I've got a big hole there. So I'm going to pull off the inner fender well. I'm going to take a better look at this situation here. I'm going to also go do the other side of the car, see what we're up against, see what I need to do to try to remedy that. Worst case scenario, it stays that way and just gets painted around it. I hate to say this, but my deal with the owner of this vehicle did not entail doing a bunch of metal fabrication and body work. It was essentially to try to salvage what was there. And I've got it cleaned out. I'll pull the inner fender wells. If I still see some rust in there, I'll probably blast in that area and clean it out properly and primer it all up and get it all smoothed out as much as possible and paint it, and we'll go from there. So we'll see. Let me get this torn apart and let me go check out the other side and I'll be back. Okay, so we've got this stripped down. We got the tire off. Got the inner fender well out, and part of that sandblasting media. that big mound of dirt came out of here. This damage is quite a bit worse than I thought. Basically, there's like little to nothing left of where the fender mounts to the rocker. You know, that whole part is pretty much eaten away. The tab that used to be here that held the inner fender well on is gone. The tab that's sitting there below it, right here, that one is barely, it's really, really thin. It's barely doing anything. The metal that's all in this area seems to be okay. The original coating and some of the seam sealer that's on here that would cover up this pinch seam is pretty much flaked off. That whole thing was literally jam-packed full of mud and road gunk. It was packed. When I pulled the inner fender wheel off, it was packed so tight that it looked like it was a sheet of metal. Started poking at it, and the whole entire thing started falling out. And that's when I realized, okay, we got a big problem. Passenger side, I haven't torn apart. It's probably in the same state. Hopefully it's not worse. If it's worse, I'll show you guys. If it's the same, don't worry about it. Okay, everyone, so I've got pretty much the areas feathered in as well as I'm going to bother to try to get it feathered in. It's time to install the Dolphin Glaze. Let me get you guys set up on a tripod here. I've got some squeegees here. Got a flat piece of cardboard to mix this stuff on, and I've got the Dolphin Glaze here. So I'm not going to mix all of this all at once. Got the little hardener pack in here. I'm going to show you guys what I'm doing. I'm looking for, you know, I've got the temperature in my shop a little bit above 60 degrees. So I'm going to read the directions on this, make sure, you know, I'm not forgetting anything. And then I'll get this all mixed up and show you guys how to do that, and then just start applying it. So there's no instructions on this, but basically, here's the deal. I've used some of this already. This is a one package of this, equal mix. Because I'm not going to mix all of this together. This stuff dries really, really fast. Within, you know, I'd say 10-15 minutes. Depending on how much hardener you have in here, I'm just going to mix small amounts. I'm going to put a couple dabs of the hardener in it, and then mix it up real good, and then start applying it. Okay? So let's start doing that now. So that's about as much as I need for this first area. Like I said, I don't want to mix too much of it because it hardens up really, really fast. Your workable time is not very good. But because it hardens up so fast, it allows you to get to work right away on sanding it. So that's about as much of the hardener I'm going to put in here. Now I'm just using a Bondo squeegee. Okay, you're just mixing it up with the squeegee. Make sure that you don't have any more of the pink trails in it. This stuff here is real nice because it doesn't leave any air bubbles. As long as you smash it in, they're good. Sometimes with body fillers and whatnot, you get a lot of pinhole bubbles and things like that. This stuff is real forgiving when it comes to not having those issues. Okay, that should be good. So just for the sake of making sure everything on the squeegee's got a good mix together, I'll scrape it off the squeegee. So I'm not going to put a lot on here. This is very runny, kind of like pancake batter. So, you know, it's not meant to fill up huge dents or anything like that. It's just meant to cover up some slight imperfections. Okay? So we're good there. We're going to move on to some of these other spots. I've got some scratches and things here. This stuff's really good for scratches. So I'm sanding the Dolphin Glaze off with 180 grit. I'm using the bigger DURA-BLOCK sanding block. Now, I'm going to try to get a little bit of a curve in the sanding block. If you bend it, you can get it to match the contour of the fenders a little better. Now this Dolphin Glaze sand's really easy, not a super hard filler, so you don't have to worry about using a DA on it or anything like that. You know, you're doing your finished work right now basically, so you don't want to use any really rough sanders that's going to remove a lot of material. You're looking to just smooth it out. Now I may switch to a smaller block here once I'm comfortable with where I'm at, so that I can get into this transition better. You want to try to avoid doing too much linear. Move the block at angles. Change it up so that you don't dig holes. Crisscross your sand scratches. So I'll be back once I get some more of this done. Okay, so I came up with a plan. I've got the Dolphin Glaze all sanded down. This area here where I circled with the Sharpie needs a little bit more attention. It's not bad, but it's not right. The other side has a couple areas as well that I need to address. But here's the deal. This area down here that has the rotted out areas and a lot of pitting, I'm not going to worry about that. I did a little bit of Dolphin Glaze in here, but I'm not going to worry about it. The reason being is I've got this rubberized undercoating. It's paintable. Okay, pick this up. It saves, I don't know, automotive paint here locally. I'm sure you can find it at some of your guys' local automotive paint suppliers. So I've used this before many times. I really like it. I can get an even consistent texture out of it. And we have this area here that's got texture on it. So what I was thinking about doing is after I shoot this thing with primer, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to tape inside the door panel or inside the door jamb, and everything on the rocker is going to be painted with that undercoating. And then up this seam to about like right here, I'll come across here with a nice line. Everything below that will be rubberized undercoating too, which will cover up all this imperfection. It'll allow me to paint over it. You won't be able to really see any of the pinholes or any stuff like that, and it'll save me a ton of time. I'm going to do that on both areas here in the rockers, on the passenger side as well. And on the rear section, this side doesn't really require it, but the other side does. But I'm going to bring it up, not on the door, but again, following that seam at the edge of the door onto the quarter panel. I'm going to raise up a little bit, and then I'm going to bring it into the fender well. And then this way it'll be matching. It'll be consistent. It'll add a little bit of strength and durability to those weakened areas, and hopefully last for a while. So that's going to be the plan. Let me mix up a little bit more Dolphin Glaze and get these low areas addressed and get some sanding done and get some primer mixed and get ready to shoot primer. So be right back.